After the Florentino Pérez outburst, another season with no major trophies, players fighting with each other, and a coach that got sacked for someone even less experienced, this could be one of the worst seasons ever for Real Madrid, and you must wonder how did we get here? Because the season did not started that bad. I mean, despite the departure of Carlo Ancelotti, they managed to bring in a very successful coach with Xabi Alonso, but there was a major issue with that appointment because Xabi Alonso was not chosen by Florentino Perez. Instead, it was José Ángel Sánchez who decided to bring him in. José Ángel Sánchez is Real Madrid Director General. He's the one in charge of most of the recruitment from the club, except the very big guys such as Kylian Mbappé or Cristiano Ronaldo and Eden Hazard, who are directly talking to Florentino Perez. José Ángel Sánchez takes care of the rest, such as Thibaut Courtois, Toni Kroos, Fede Valverde. He's also the one who set up the Real Madrid network in South America, which allowed them to get Vinicius Jr. or Endrick. And they had quite some success since he's been with the team since the year 2000, but there was also a little bit of failure, such as the De Gea transfer, which failed due to some administrative delays, or the Rafa Benitez appointment, one of the worst coach in Real Madrid recent history, and also the Betoni case, the assistant manager of Zidane who didn't have a coaching degree. So José Ángel Sánchez is a very controversial character, but the Xabi Alonso appointment was seen as a very good one because Xabi Alonso is first a legend of Real Madrid. He won the Champions League, La Liga, and 2 Copa del Rey with them. And then when he became a coach at Bayer Leverkusen, he also had a lot of success. He took a team that was not very well known and went on an undefeated run, winning the Bundesliga for the first time in their history, lost his only game in the final of the Europa League against Atalanta, and also won the Pokal, the German Cup, playing a very organized football with a high press, and we were expecting him to also change the way Real Madrid was playing because at the time they didn't really have an identity. His first test came with the Club World Cup. It was a competition that Florentino Perez absolutely wanted to win because, well, again, they were coming out of a season with no major trophy, so it was important for him to win the Club World Cup. And they did not do that bad. I mean, they went to the semi-final of the competition and lost 4-0 against PSG, who was the best team at the time and maybe still today in Europe. So nothing surprising. On top of that, Real Madrid made 2 critical defensive mistakes at the beginning of the game, which cost them 2 goals, and from there on it was pretty complicated to come back. Then the 25-26 season started, and Real Madrid once again were on a very good run, winning the first 7 games, including 1 Champions League game against Marseille. But there was a major issue. We could still not see Xabi Alonso's identity, and they were depending a lot on Kylian Mbappé scoring goals. So when they faced Atletico Madrid, who was not doing as well, winning only 2 games in La Liga and sitting at the 8th position, they were exposed, losing 5-2 after being ahead 2-1 at halftime. But Atletico Madrid took advantage on set pieces, and they also noticed that Real Madrid was not good at defending on header and crosses. It was the first crack in Xabi Alonso's tenure, and he admitted in the press conference that Atletico Madrid was the better team that day and Real Madrid would have to show a better attitude in order to keep winning. They responded well in the Champions League game that followed, winning 5-0 and 3-1 against Villarreal the following week. Went on a 6-game winning streak with 1 win in El Clasico, which was supposed to be the peak of Xabi Alonso. But again, for some reason, despite that win, we saw that there was a lot of tension within the team. When Xabi Alonso decided to sub out Vinicius, he was very upset, screaming at the bench, and decided to go straight to the locker room, not even looking at Xabi Alonso. He finally came out at the end of the game, started the fight with Barcelona bench, and we saw that, well, despite Xabi Alonso taking over, the attitude of the player was still the same and he was not getting the respect he wanted. They won the following week against Valencia, but then lost in the Champions League against Liverpool, and they did not exist at all that game. Liverpool dominated from the beginning to the end. Real Madrid barely had any opportunities, and it was clear that there was a lot of tension within the team. After that, they only managed to win 2 games out of the 7 that followed, dropping at the same time the first position to Barcelona. And by beginning of December, there was already a lot of people asking for Xabi Alonso dismissal, even though they were only 4 points behind Barcelona. A lot of the players were contesting his authority. It was clear with Vinicius, he showed a lot of frustration during games about being subbed out too early or sometimes even starting on the bench. But there was also other players who were feigning to sleep during the tactical session or chatting during the briefing, feeling that it was too long and unnecessary. On top of that, Xabi Alonso didn't really have the president backing. As we mentioned earlier, Florentino Pérez was not the one who appointed him, so he was not necessarily supporting him in those moments. Then the final straw came in the second Clásico game, the Supercopa final against Barcelona, when Real Madrid lost 3-2, and despite coming back to the score twice, we could see that Barcelona was clearly the better team out of the two. They were more structured, playing together, while Madrid depended a lot on individual plays from Vinicius and Gonzalo Garcia. Mbappé started that game on the bench, but even when he got in, he was still not able to score that third goal that could have taken the game to the penalty session. So another trophy loss for Real Madrid, and Xabi Alonso decided to leave on mutual agreement. Apparently, the team would have sacked him anyway, but from his side, he was also claiming that he was tired of coaching that team. He felt like he was in a kindergarten, and he didn't come there to micromanage these divas. So Álvaro Arbeloa took over. He was the coach of Real Madrid B team, not as experienced as Xabi Alonso. He never coached a first team, but he was one of the very loyal guy of Florentino Pérez, and he had his full trust. The players also liked him, they liked his communication and the way he was treating them. They also felt like his tactic was not as complicated as Xabi Alonso's one, so he had the favor of most of the people. But at the end of the day, the results were not as good. He lost 8 of his 25 games, when Xabi Alonso lost 6 out of 34. Álvaro Arbeloa also started with a loss against Albacete, a second division team, which was a huge blow for Real Madrid, and another trophy loss. But his run in the Champions League was quite surprising. They managed to eliminate Manchester City without Kylian Mbappé, which started raising some question about whether he's a good fit in the team or not. Then they played the quarterfinal against Bayern Munich, and this time with Mbappé they almost qualify. If it was not for the red card Camavinga took in the second leg, maybe the game would have gone to overtime and then it would have been a different story. But well, Camavinga took that red card and it was another trophy loss for Real Madrid. Then they only had La Liga to play, but they were in the second position, 3 games behind Barcelona, and they lost El Clásico at Camp Nou against Barcelona, which allowed them to finally claim the championship, and it was again a final trophy loss for Real Madrid. On top of that, before the game, a lot of tension started to appear after the win against Espanyol Barcelona, which was a meaningless win, but still, Bellingham wanted to celebrate that win, posting a photo of the team without Mbappé, who was injured and therefore decided to go on vacation with his girlfriend. So Bellingham decided to show Mbappé that the team could win without him, and also make sure that he showed much love to Vinicius as well. Then 3 days later, we heard of a fight between Valverde and Tchouaméni. Apparently Valverde was accusing Tchouaméni to be a snitch, so he was very aggressive with him at training, and apparently Tchouaméni punched him, which sent Valverde to the hospital. Valverde and Tchouaméni denied the accusation because, well, of course, I don't think they would have ever admitted this. But still, they got a 500,000 fine, which would be a lot for 2 people that actually didn't punch each other. Then we also heard that there was a fight between Rudiger and Carreras earlier in the season. Another fight, this time not physical, but still between Mbappé and Bellingham earlier in the season as well. So there's always been a lot of tension in the squad, and it felt like the team was very divided. Arbeloa was accused of not getting involved enough in order to solve the situation. Well, he did get involved at the very end of the season when there was nothing left to play, and he decided to put Mbappé on the bench. Officially, the reason was that he was coming back from an injury, but in reality, Mbappé also made fun of the team the game before when they were losing 2-0 in El Clásico, and that's when he decided to post an Instagram story saying Real Madrid. Prior to that, he also liked a post assuming Mourinho as the new coach of Real Madrid next season, and even though Arbeloa acted like this did not annoy him, I wouldn't be surprised if it actually did, because, well, as an interim coach, he could be looking for a permanent contract as well. When he subbed in Mbappé, that's when the fans started showing their frustration, whistling at him every time he was touching the ball. And Mbappé made the decision at the end of the game to talk to the media and explain the reason why he got benched, saying that he became the first striker in the squad behind Mascherano, Vinicius and Gonzalo Garcia. And he also added that the team was performing much better under Xabi Alonso than they are currently, to which Arbeloa replied that first, he never said that Mbappé was the first striker and he must have misunderstood him. He also mentioned that he's the one who gets to decide who plays and he doesn't care about the name of the player when he set up his lineup. Then he said that Mbappé must be frustrated because he was scoring more goals at the beginning of the season than he is now. But in fact, when we look at the stat, well, Xabi Alonso was scoring more points per game than Arbeloa is, and Arbeloa is even below the standard 2 points per game of Real Madrid. Then we also have Florentino Pérez, who got accused to let the player get bigger than the organization, which never happened in the past at Real Madrid. Some people were saying that he's maybe too old to stay as a president, which led him to schedule a last-minute press conference with the media and go on an outburst where he said that he would not resign but he would do some new election instead. And well, at the end of the day, he's the only one who can win the elections, because in order to become the president of Real Madrid, you have to be a 20-year socios and you need to have enough money to show that you can support the finance of the club. So only Florentino Pérez is able to prove that, as far as we know, because there's no other candidate that presented himself. So let's see. But well, if you get re-elected, even as the only candidate, I guess it should show that people are still believing in him and they still want him to be the president. That would be the approval that he's seeking. At the end of the day, Madrid need to change coach. I mean, we know that Arbeloa will not stay. It could be either Mourinho, who's the main candidate so far. Then we also have Didier Deschamps, the current coach of the French team. That could be also an interesting choice. And finally, Jurgen Klopp. But Jurgen Klopp would have to openly say that he wants the role in order to get considered as a candidate, because so far he keeps denying his interest for the Madrid position, although that could be the best option out of the three. But at the same time, that could be a very similar situation to what Xabi Alonso had, because Jurgen Klopp is a coach that would need to set up his style, and in order to do so, the player would need to follow. And that's the main issue with Real Madrid, the players, because so far, no matter the coach you will put there, the players are the one getting the control, and as long as they have the control, they will not be able to win together. On top of that, the team is dysfunctional, so you have players that have a style that does not go along. For example, Vinicius and Mbappé, I don't know if they can play together. Vinicius is a left winger, Mbappé is also a left winger that is forced to play as a striker, but in his identity he still plays as a left winger, and I don't know if he can fully adapt the striking role. Then we have the tension that recently emerged with Valverde and Tchouaméni. Maybe that could fix itself over time, maybe not, and then Real Madrid would have to get rid of one of the two. So far what we're hearing is that Valverde is the one that escalated that situation. So it would be surprising to see Real Madrid get rid of Tchouaméni and keep Valverde when he's not having the full support of the team. But at the same time, he's been the captain of that team for most of the season, and he's been very good this season. He is the main reason why they qualified against Manchester City. So it won't necessarily be the best option to also get rid of him. Maybe they would have to find a way to get them to peace out and, you know, play together and forget about the past, because as Florentino Pérez said, fight happens in any team. It's just that when media want to talk about it, they will, but when the team is doing well and there's no point talking about the fights, they won't talk about it. So, you know, I think Madrid is not in such a bad situation. They are very good players. but they need to finally get the environment and the atmosphere right in order to win, because they showed that when they are willing to play together against Bayern Munich, against City, and in the first Clásico this season, they can win. They can win, they don't need much in order to win. They already have the players, they already have a lot of talent. The main area to improve is the defense, where you need someone experienced instead of Aysen and Asensio, who are way too young. And then the midfield, I don't think that's an area to focus, but if you have to improve it, then yes, you would need a playmaker. But still, I believe that with the current midfield that they have, with Tchouaméni, with Bellingham, with Valverde if he stays, and Trent Alexander-Arnold, who can also play as a midfielder, they have a lot of potential to have something solid.